My name's Fred. I'm the head coach at Mindful Runner. I'm also a certified core coach. And today we're going to be talking about something that has bitten us all at some point. And that is the impact of heat on our training and our racing. Okay, I've called this one the hidden race day killer because we underestimate the impact that heat is having on us. You know, it's all well and good at a race like Addo, where it's hot and we all expect it to be hot. We are anticipating the heat and the impact of that. When it comes to less obvious temperatures, right? You're running in 24 degrees Celsius. You don't think that the heat's getting to you, but there is a slow burn effect that's happening, slowly building up as your muscles work, as they work harder, so they're producing heat. That heat is increasing your core temperature. And that has a much steeper effect than most of us would suspect. So the real problem here is when you're overheating undermines your fueling. It undermines your pacing. It undermines your performance. As your core temperature increases, so your heart rate goes up in an attempt to cool the body down, right? So your heart rate's going up. It's pushing more blood to your skin, and evaporative cooling from the plasma in your blood that's coming out on the surface of your skin, that's allowing you to cool down. And your heart's got to increase in order to push more blood out to your skin. As the heart rate increases, so your tolerance for fuel, for solid foods, for gels, for whatever kind of fueling, goes down. And your performance goes down. So the key point to understand here is as your core temperature increases, you are becoming less and less effective as a runner. Now, we're human beings. We're built to run. We're built to endure in these circumstances. Evaporative cooling is our friend. It works for us, right? But even that has limits. We've got an upper limit of around 40 degrees Celsius, and then we are in the danger zone. So our bodies can get pretty close to 40 degrees Celsius, and then we have a problem. And we'll talk about that in a little while. Now, what we've done is we've put together this matrix that hopefully demonstrates or gives you an image of what is going on in terms of fueling and using heat monitoring to have you fuel more effectively during your races. So if you look at the 4 quadrants, on the left-hand side, we have core temperature, and on the bottom, we have intensity. So bottom quadrant, the green quadrant, we have a low core temperature and a low intensity. At low core temperature, low intensity, I've got a high fuel tolerance, right? I can pretty much eat anything I want to. And imagine you're walking through the park and you're eating a sandwich as you stroll along. That's this low core temperature, low intensity. Now, it gets hot. It's a hot day. It's humid. You don't really feel like that hamburger anymore. I'd rather have something cooler. I would rather have a drink, maybe an ice cream. Trust your brain. Now we move over to maintaining that low core temperature, but we're starting to run now. So our intensity is increasing. At low core temperature, high intensity, I'm not really able to eat that hamburger anymore. I just don't feel like it. And this is why I said, trust your instinct. Your brain just doesn't want to eat that thing. But at this kind of effort, my high intensity and my low core temperature, I can take on gels, I can take on liquids. When we look at the top right-hand quadrant, the red quadrant, we're looking at a high core temperature and high intensity. Now, at that kind of intensity with a high core temperature, it's very difficult to take on food of any sort. And many people will be nauseous under these circumstances. And this is where your DNF risk is, right? So we've got to talk about strategies to cool yourself down. And the most obvious strategy is to slow down, reduce the intensity. So if you can bring your intensity down, you're then going to fall into that bottom quadrant. And if you bring that intensity down for long enough, you'll be able to start fueling up again. The other option is to stay in that red zone, but find ways to cool yourself down to bring your core temperature down. So you would move into low core, high intensity. And that would be ingesting ice, pouring water over yourself, running with ice in your hands. There are various ways to cool yourself down. But this picture hopefully will give you the right concepts when we talk about how heat impacts your fueling during an event. I just want to talk about some core definitions here. And the core device is a device that helps you measure your core temperature. It fits onto your body on a heart rate strap, sits up against your rib cage, and it gives us a good indication of what your internal core temperature is. What the core device will do, along with its software, is it will give us a heat training load. Much as we have CTL in Training Peaks or chronic training load, we're able to see what the overall load is you've been able to take on through training. We have a heat strain index, which shows us just how difficult that particular workout was in terms of heat. And then ultimately a heat adaptation score, right? So this leads us to a heat adaptation score. Just how adapted are you for the event? Now, what's great about this is we can always do heat training and heat training adaptation without a device, but we're never sure about how well adapted we are. We did the protocol. We think we got the numbers right, but we're going in blind. With a device like the Core, we can see exactly how much work we've done at heat. We can see what our heat adaptation score is, and we can learn for ourselves, when I'm this much heat adapted, what is my fueling like at, say, 35 degrees Celsius when I'm out there running? When I'm looking at a heat strain index of 9 out of 10, how easy is it for me to eat something solid? And we can start looking at the heat strain index being for this particular run. I can start looking at where my fueling options are at various heat strain indexes. And ultimately, we get a very clear picture from a training point of view, and it'll lead into the race, just how much we can take on at different heat strains. When it comes to training, we've got two basic training methods for heat adaptation and heat conditioning. One is an active one, where you're either running or you're cycling or you're rowing or you're walking fast or you're on an indoor trainer or on a treadmill. And the way to crank up the heat there is put on more clothing. Go out for a run and put on a lot of clothing. You can be on a treadmill or an indoor bike if you have an air-conditioned office or an air-conditioned home gym. Crank up the air conditioner, run on the treadmill, run on the bike. Add clothing as well. So that's active. Then passive heat conditioning would be in a sauna, in a bath. Get that temperature up to close to 40 degrees Celsius and spend time in a bath at that temperature, spend time in a sauna at those kind of temperatures. So those two kinds of conditioning, and the two can be combined, and we'll talk about that shortly as well. Now, this is a good example of why we want to be able to measure in real life, in real terms. I got this call from an old friend who had heard that I was a core coach. And you can see it. Morning, Fred, I'm back then. You get my heat strain into a zone 3. I ran yesterday with a thermal base layer and my rain jacket on. And by the way, he also had long tights on. And he was only able to get himself up to a tiny little 1.9 on his heat strain index. Now, under normal circumstances, if I'm out there running in a base layer and a rain jacket and long thermal tights in Southern Africa, I'd be feeling pretty hot. And he was feeling pretty hot. But what he was getting from his device was, you're not putting enough effort in. This is not having an impact. So we chatted, and I suggested he already got there, but I suggested he put on an additional layer over that. So base layer, rain jacket, and another layer over that. And off he went, did his run. And this is the feedback on the right-hand side. Just by adding that puffy over my rain jacket, I got to the desired heat stress. Bloody hard work. Okay. And he's training for salt pans, which is happening shortly. So you can see that if he had just been doing a normal protocol, a heat training protocol, without any feedback other than how he was feeling, he initially felt like he was doing the work. He was hot under his jackets with his long pants on, but he wasn't hot enough to get adaptation. And that's the key. So we've got a real way of measuring whether you're getting the adaptation or not. So let's take a look at how much time do you actually need from a heat training point of view to get the adaptations required. And it's a 10 to 14 day block. So you can get all of the heat adaptation necessary for your race in a 10 to 14 day block. And there's two ways to deal with this. One is you do this 3 weeks before your race. You pile on this 10 to 14 days of heat training, and it would look like this. The first 2 sessions, 45 minutes to an hour, always more than 40 minutes for heat training, right? Overdress, and on the heat strain index, we want it at around about a 3 if you're wearing a device. Otherwise, just feel uncomfortable, right? Put the 3 layers on, you should feel pretty uncomfortable. Always, as I said, more than 40 minutes, closer to 60 minutes. So we're going to do 2 sessions like that. Then sessions 3 to 6, we want to go 60 to 75 minutes. Add an external heat stress if you can. So add another layer. Get out there. If you're using the device, you want to be at a heat index of between 3 and 5. And then finally, the last 3 sessions, we want to get close to 90 minutes, right? 75 to 90 minutes. Hot conditions, overdress, and really put the hammer down, run hard, but a nice controlled finish. That's 10 sessions spread out across 2 weeks, roughly 3 weeks before your race. Heat conditioning, like altitude conditioning, only lasts for about 3 to 4 weeks. It's no good doing your heat conditioning way out there 6 months before your race. And it's certainly no good trying to, because you know you're going to be going to a hot race, run every one of your training sessions hot, because that's counterproductive, right? You want to just target specific sessions as being your heat adaptation, because heat adaptation is going to hammer you, and it's going to compromise the quality of the sessions you can put in. So you want to limit this to the most effective things you can do, 10 to 14 days. What you could also do, and this I suggest is the better protocol, 6 months before your event, let's say you're racing Addo or you're racing Badwater, 6 months before the event, you do this block, this 2-week block in which you are going to get your maximum heat adaptation. And then what we will look at doing is weekly top-ups as we move towards race day. So we've done 2 weeks right at the beginning of our race preparation. We got ourselves well heat adapted. And then as we progress, once a week, maybe twice a week, we do a heat adaptation session, 45 minutes plus in that 3 to 6 heat strain index. That's just going to keep the effects of our heat training topped up. And then 2 to 4 weeks before race day, then we look at the event, and we go, what is the anticipated temperatures we're going to be getting? Just how heat conditioned do I need to be? And then we go back to that 2-week protocol of nailing down 10 days and getting that done. With 2 weeks left before our race, we're now into our taper. And in that taper, we will do light and passive heat adaptation. So the passive heat adaptation would be get into a sauna, get into a hot bath, just overdress around your house, put a lot of warm stuff on. That's the passive side of things. Now, one of the indicators away from the core device, let's assume you're not using a core device. Another indicator is your aerobic decoupling. Aerobic decoupling confirms your adaptation. And what aerobic decoupling is, your heart rate is going to run pretty much parallel to your pace and your effort for a long time until the point at which we spoke about earlier, your internal temperature increases to the extent that your heart rate increases beyond the kind of effort you're running at now. Because now you're starting to overheat, your heart's going to go faster and faster to help cool you down. Now, within Training Peaks, for those of you who are using Training Peaks, there is this value, PAHR. And that PAHR is an indication of cardiac drift or aerobic decoupling. And what you're looking for is you're looking for that cardiac drift to be below 5% for the same kind of aerobic run. Okay, we're looking at aerobic runs here. So let's say you go out for an hour's run and you run for an hour, and the first time you do it, you sit with a PAHR of 14.37, which is quite high. Okay. You do your heat conditioning, and immediately after that heat conditioning, you go out for that run again, and you find, oh, your PAHR is now below 5%. That means that for that hour run, you are now conditioned aerobically for that hour at those kinds of temperatures. What you would then look to do is, let's run the same kind of effort for an hour 10, and let's see where that cardiac drift goes to. And in time, an hour and a half, 2 hours. So what you're looking to do is you're looking to move the point at which your heart rate deflects away from your effort, that decouple, that cardiac drift. You're looking to move it further and further right along the graph. So this is a good indication of aerobic conditioning, but it's a very good indication of heat conditioning as well. There are other factors that influence the aerobic decoupling, and that would be fueling and hydration. And we will be doing talks on those in the coming weeks. But this is a number that is heavily influenced by heat adaptation. So I spoke about the fact that we as humans can operate fairly well at extreme temperatures, but there comes a tipping point, right? And it is about 39.5 degrees Celsius. Beyond that point, you're going to find it very difficult to recover. If you go beyond 39.5 degrees Celsius, you're going to find it extremely difficult to recover from effort at that kind of temperature. It's going to take hours to come back from that. It's not going to take a couple of minutes of cooling down. You know, if you're in this yellow zone, somewhere between 38.5 and 39.5, that's a fairly okay zone to be racing in, but you've got to start paying attention. And that means making sure you're cooling down. You know, every time you go past a stream or past a water source, splash water on yourself. Every time you get an opportunity to get icy drinks into your hands and into your stomach, do so. Okay, because that's going to keep that core temperature down. But if you let your core temperature get close to 40, 39.5 to 40, it's out of control. You have to stop. Again, you don't know that if you don't have an actual means of measuring it. You don't know what your core temperature is. So you don't want to even take it close to that. But you want to stay in the green because you're 1 degree Celsius. That's all it's going to take to tip you over the edge. Now, that's where the core device comes in again. It allows you to get really close to that edge without going over. Massively important. Just being able to see what your numbers are. You can see when you have to back off during a race, during training. You can see when you can probably carry on pushing for a little bit longer. Okay? So if you're racing with the device, it's going to give you the kind of information that's going to allow you to take it to the edge. And from a training point of view, equally so. You know, you can really get into ramping up your heat conditioning nice and high. Okay, what are the signs that we want to look out for when you're overheating? Nausea is the most obvious one. Dizziness is another. Dark urine. You know, we always talk about this to our athletes. The urine check, man. If you go to pee, make sure you check the color because dark urine indicates serious overheating and dehydration going on. And then extreme fatigue. Heat is going to make you extremely tired, more to running in a cool environment. So let's look at an example of what a weekly plan would look like once we had done our initial adaptations, right? This is a weekly plan where we're going to go, right, day one, I'm going to do a medium heat session. And then day two is a recovery. I'm going to run in normal cool conditions. So this is a plan where we're looking to do our adaptations now. Day three is another heat session, but a long one. Then we're going to, the next day is a cool workout and then heat session, recovery. So what we're looking at here is each or every second day, we're allowing ourselves a recovery. We might do a back-to-back run every now and then, back-to-back heat runs, but mostly we want to give the body time to recover from that heat session because the adaptation is at a cellular level. It's mostly about increasing your blood volume more than anything else, and that takes a little time. So have a heat session, recover. Have a heat session, recover. And much like our other kinds of trainings, sometimes have a hard one, like a really high strain. Sometimes it's just a long, steady one. What you can also do, and this I spoke earlier about doing the passive mixed with an active, because this is active conditioning. You can go out for a run under cool conditions and end that run and jump straight into a sauna. So you're not stopping between any of your run to cool down. You're going straight into the sauna, sauna up at a decent temperature, and spend as much as 30 to 40 minutes in the sauna. So that's passive. So you've been able to do a good run. It's not impacted by heat. It's not slowed you down. You get a good quality run in and then jump into the sauna to get that heat adaptation. An important point during this heat training is you do not dehydrate yourself. Massively important. Heat training is, you're not going to get any benefit by running dehydrated. So make sure that you're hydrating normally, even during your heat sessions. You're just going to sweat a lot, but you need the fluid. So do not run dehydrated. It's a sure way to run yourself into trouble. What's next from us? Over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing another webinar on hydration and how that impacts your training and your racing. And the last one will be on, then on nutrition. And then the final part will be integrating all of these things, integrating heat, hydration, nutrition into one holistic picture in terms of training and in terms of race planning, how best to execute under race conditions and what to use. Keep working at it. Remember, we want to look to maximize our adaptations, and that means training smarter. And if we train smarter and we maximize our adaptations, we're going to finish strong. If you want to get in touch with somebody who understands heat training and how to use the core technology to its best effect, jump on a call with one of the Mindful Runner coaches. Get onto our website, set up an appointment. Let's have a chat. If you take a look in the show notes, I have dropped a link that summarizes what we went through here. And there's a link there to our website as well. And you can contact us through the website. So thanks for attending. Appreciate your time. Let's see if we've got any questions in the chat. Yeah, good point, Mark. That's super important. If you have the core device on your body, then you are able to see your heat stress score real time as you're going. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see your projected core temperature as well. So it can be used during training, but also for me, most importantly, during racing to establish whether I should or shouldn't be eating. And maybe I didn't get into that deeply enough, but we'll definitely be using core temperature to guide our fueling strategies, establish what I can take on at what kind of temperatures while I'm running in training. And then during the race, I'm going to be making sure that I'm fueling according to not only the gradient that I'm running on or the intensity that I'm running on, but certainly the impact of my core temperature will influence what I'm going to be fueling on, whether it's liquid or solid or nothing at all. Guys, actually, final point here, if anyone is interested in getting a core device, I will also put the link into the show notes. DM me directly. We've got a 20% discount that we can offer to anybody buying a device. We'll also have at least one device available for rent, because I understand that for some people, maybe this is a device you'll be using maybe every once a quarter. It's not something you'll use every day. And so it seems like quite an expense. So we will have devices available for rent. But I think if you look at this from a training point of view and then being able to inform your fueling during a race, I reckon it's worth having your own device throughout, even if you're only using it 3 months in the year. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time. I hope everybody learned something of value. Catch you all later.